Good morning, all my Gamecock friends out there. This is Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Today's Wednesday, August 20th, the year of our Lord 2025. Didn't want to get ahead of myself on that. Good to be with you today. Got a packed day here on the Chief Sports Network. Tailgate Talks with Steven Garcia and Pat DeMarco has dropped. Got to get my notes situated here. Um, and it's a good one. Luke Doty, Nick Harbor, and Dylan Stewart are the guest of Pat and Steven. You can get that on Gamecocks Plus if you're a member on their YouTube channel, youtube.com/at tailgate talks 547. Please go mash their subscribe button along with mashing ours right here on Chief South Carolina. And it's a really good one. You can get the audio version, the podcast version on the Chief Sports app. That's a free download, free show, free. It's all free. Then coming up at 9:30, JC and Morgan, college football forever. We'll have Tom Luganbill, and that's exciting because we love Tom. He's a great American. For you Gamecocks out there, probably he works for the ACC network. I may ask him a little bit about Virginia Tech. I don't know. That's the subject of today's coffee, by the way. Maybe to get some additional intel. It's time to start looking at them. They have a lot of new players. Reading some reports out of Blacksburg, I don't know. And I hate to say I don't know because it sounds that way a lot. With the new college football thing. I'm like, well, it's your job to know, JC. I know a little, but I don't want to sit out there and say something definitive, and then it's the total opposite because it could be that way. It's the way this game goes. Like now, I'll say things about the Gamecock linebackers. I'll go down with that ship, but I'm not at Virginia Tech practice. I talked to a couple of people over there, but most of the folks at Virginia Tech I talked to are just they're not. They're kind of where Carolina was in the offseason last year, as far as the fans and the people that cover the program and follow the program. Um, Inside the building in Blacksburg, they think they've upgraded overall. And, it's hard to say that on paper when some of their best players, especially on defense and the offensive line, walked out the door in the portal. Others went to the NFL, and they were 6-7 football team last year. But, if you're the Gamecocks, you sort of, there are players that left after 2023, ended up, all right, didn't it? So, we're going to talk about the Hokies here in a second, but we'll ask Tom about Virginia Tech and some other things around college football. Week 0 this weekend, obviously. You can check out collegefootballforever.com along with chiefsportsnetwork.com. Collegefootballforever.com is the home of JC and Morgan and SEC Sunday Night and some college football list and information. It's kind of fun. And then chiefsportsnetwork.com. Pop culture, daily schedule, high school sports in South Carolina. Be sure to bookmark those websites because those are very important and they pull up right on your mobile phone too. It's if you logged on at some point and then it was like, oh man, this is a mess. The mobile version has been cleaned up, real easy to use. So check those websites out. At 10 o'clock, I cannot think of two greater Americans to be on our network back to back and maybe at the same time a little bit at 10 o'clock. And you Gamecock fans are going to have to make a choice. Maybe you catch JC and Morgan in the archive or the morning show in the archive. But Steven Garcia returns, speaking of, to his Wednesday perch on the morning show. Also, Brad Crawford from CBS 24/7 Sports and Rob Williams from SEC Sunday Night. So a full house for JB. It is wide open Wednesday, which means you can get in the chat box and not have to be a Club Chief member. If you'd like to join Club Chief, it's only $4.99 a month. You can chat it up with us every single day. And then the show, it may be time for my annual special teams freakout. I don't know. But that's another wide open Wednesday episode. Sports Talk tonight from 6 to 8 and leading into the late night Gamecock show, which starts at 8. Get all those on the Chief Sports app, this YouTube channel, College Football Forever YouTube channel. All that good stuff, and certainly appreciate everybody tuning in. Housekeeping out of the way. Shane Beamer had a press conference yesterday Not a whole lot of firm intel. He talked about Rasul Faison, and his opinion is, and then they're like everybody else. I mean, they unlike us, they can like call the NCAA and ask them what's taking so long. Uh, but Beamer kind of believes that they're in line. I've used the analogy of the deli at the grocery store because I have to live that. My stepson, he goes through sandwiches, so I'm always hitting the deli up, and because I like to get him to cut it for me. I don't know, maybe that's a bougie thing of mine, but you take a number, and like I said, they have one person working, getting meat, and then five people back there doing God knows what. It's frustrating. Or the DMV. I mean, the NCAA. I don't think you can clearly state that it's not similar to the DMV, especially in the great state of South Carolina. Those DMV experiences, especially when I was a kid or a teenager. Oh my God. And God forbid you don't have the right paperwork. Sounds so familiar. Maybe the DMV is a better analogy for the NCAA. Think about it. Think about it. Anyway, my little bursting into song and getting off track like that's really reserved for the show. I know you guys want to hear about football, guys and gals, this morning. Um, so Beamer had some good things to say about Brandon Cisse. Uh, I'll save the special teams freak out for later, but I don't know that I'm going to freak out because Beamer kind of, he's been pretty honest about this. I think at SEC Media Days, he said he didn't feel good about it. And people could take that different ways. In other words, it's going to be a struggle, is one way you can take it. But I think what Beamer was saying heading into practice, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. I mean, you got Joe DeCamillis and Shane Beamer on the same side. And look, man, if Max Kelly or Mason Love struggle, they have other kickers. I mean, look at Clemson a couple of years ago. They called a guy back onto the roster that I guess he gotten cut or quit. And look at what he did against South Carolina at the end. So my point is, if the Gamecocks have kicking struggles this year, there's always some solutions. I'm not saying they'll get somebody out of the student body, but they won't be the first team that has those. And that cost Clemson some games, if you think about it. But it won them the big one at the end over the Gamecocks as well. Kept Carolina from going to a bowl. Where have we heard that before? Back in the early 2000s. But it's one of those things where I feel better. And look, Max Kelly and Mason Love are scholarship kickers. It's not like these guys are you're kind of dependent on walk-ons. I mean, Alex Herrera was originally a walk-on until last season, and so you'd like to think that if you're going to spend a scholarship on a kicker, although scholarships are more scholarships these days, I guess. Actually, still 85 in the SEC. But if you're gonna do that and put him on scholarship, he's probably pretty good. As we've seen, Mitch Jeter. A lot of people gave Muschamp crap for signing Mitch Jeter and Kai Kroger in the same class to scholarships, and those guys, gosh, that will hit that one out of the park for both those guys. Mitch Jeter's struggles at Notre Dame early in the year notwithstanding. So, yeah. So Max and Mason are scholarship guys, so it's good. I don't know who the long snapper is going to be. They did sign a guy from Wisconsin, Kyle Farrow, I think is his name. But there's others in the mix too. They didn't really. We'll have to wait for the depth chart on that, man. That's just not something I'm gonna track down. He did mention Coder Woods could be the holder, or others could be the holder. It kind of depended on how the kicker thing worked out. But if he's happy and not concerned, I don't think he's gonna lie and blow sunshine based on his comments at the beginning of the season. I think they'll be all right, right? I think they'll be all right. And I think like one of the things he mentioned too, and I don't mean to be talking special teams this whole time because we're obviously going to get that in the show later today. But one of the things he did mention was a lot of freshmen are going to be playing on special teams. That's good because if you recruit well and you have good athletes, and maybe there's just not a spot because you got older players ahead of them, you can actually have more talent on your special teams and more effective special teams than you can with like walk-ons when it's majority walk-ons. Now, there are some walk-ons that are going to play a lot of special teams this year. Some of them are on scholarship right now, like Colin Bryant, but they've all those freshman linebackers are going to be useful. The freshman defensive backs, some of the younger defensive backs like Jalua Solomon. Beamer even mentioned Isaiah Gustav as being a good special teams player. So I think a lot of times, not necessarily your operational kick units, but your coverage units, your block units, all those are kind of based on just how good of an athlete are you recruiting and how willing is it are they to go play special teams. Like I said, Nick Saban had some pretty talented dudes on special teams. So did Urban Meyer. The great ones do. The great ones do. So that discussion, we'll get into all of that later. But Virginia Tech, so game is, this time next week, we'll be in the middle of the week. One other housekeeping note as it relates to the Gamecocks. So next week, because the game is on Sunday, everything's moved back. So Beamer's press conference will actually be 1 week from today. Coordinator presser on Thursday. Their day off will, I think, shift to Tuesday. So everything's up one day because it's a Sunday game. First Sunday game South Carolina's played in. Second one I can ever remember. The first one was in 2016. Beamer was a part of that game. Special teams coordinator at Georgia actually drew up. If you guys remember, it was 21-14 Georgia. They rescheduled. It was kind of most of the reschedulings at Carolina with football games because of weather, hurricanes over the years. And crazy enough, back in the day, Hugo came through during the week. And Carolina still played. I think they played Georgia Tech. I was at that game, I think 80, 89. But a little more sensitive to it nowadays. And you have technology, obviously, and all that. But and with the flooding that happened in 2015, I don't blame anybody for doing it. But that was one where it was supposed to be at night. And they rescheduled it for Sunday afternoon. Beamer drew up the final onside kick return that Georgia housed, and I convinced Brent Musburger the line was like Carolina +8 or something. And I'm convinced Musburger, as excited as he was when Carolina kind of scored a touchdown to make it a 7-point game late, you could hear the disappointment in his voice. So I don't know, Brent. You tell me. But I remember Beamer standing next to Kirby Smart drawing that play up. So Beamer coached the last time there was a Sunday game at the University of South Carolina. This one obviously is on a neutral site in the state of Georgia against his alma mater. So we're trucking toward a week from game time. It's going faster than I thought. Maybe it's because I got a medical thing I got to go do tomorrow and Elvis night with the White Sox game on Friday. So anyway, Virginia Tech. So I've been digging in. VT Scoop is the site on 24/7 Sports. If you're a BigSpur.com member, all access VIP, you can go read all of their good stuff. I helped start that site actually back in 2014. Good guys. Evan Watkins is one of the guys that is still there, Evan G. Watkins. And some of the Hokies are sick of hearing about Carolina, and I don't blame them. I mean, that's a proud program. That's a program that, just like a lot of schools that lose a legendary coach, they're going to go through some transition. I was wrong about Justin Fuente. I thought Fuente, given what he was at Memphis, which is a guy that could just go find players, kind of like Frank Beamer, I thought that he would do quite well there. But he didn't. And it's not, and look, a lot of people, when Carolina hired Muschamp, they sort of criticized Tanner a little bit for not hiring Fuente. It kind of, I was like, well, this guy's a good evaluator, and probably not right now with the shape the program's in, going to win some recruiting battles. And some of those classes under Spurrier were actually ranked in the top 20 and full of buzz. So, I'm not saying I disagreed with it. I could see a scenario where he was the coach at South Carolina. I mean, he was doing well at Memphis, and I thought Virginia Tech made a heck of a hire. I was wrong. He started off like gangbusters, inherited a bunch of good players from Frank, and ended up winning. But there is a difference between Frank Beamer's recruiting, which is kind of like what Shane does. You know, they make great evaluations, but they also go get studs. It's in-state heavy. I think South Carolina actually on paper has been a little more attractive going up and down. A lot of that's because Virginia Tech, or some of that is because Virginia Tech has not been a sexy option for in-state players. Some of the guys out of Virginia. There's a Virginia decision coming on Friday too with five-star Darius Gray. But it's kind of a blend. Maximize your roster. Frank Beamer was an excellent evaluator. He personally wrote evaluations on every player, including walk-ons. That was kind of what he did. I don't think, I guess he may have been a DC at some point, OC. I don't know that he wasn't a coordinator at like a major program. He kind of head coach at Murray State, head coach at Virginia Tech. So that's kind of that. And special teams, kind of what he did. And then he let his coaches coach, and that was the secret sauce. But there's a difference between what he did and what Justin Fuente was. Justin Fuente was, I don't like to recruit. It was almost Paul Johnson level. Like, and I'm like, Bubba, you don't run the option. You have some option stuff in your offense, and he's a good coordinator, good offensive mind. But man, the talent level just started sinking. He wasn't very likable. And the guy that follows the guy, I mean, look, Will Muschamp was the guy that followed the guy at Carolina. It obviously didn't work out, but at least Muschamp was affable. And, you talk to anybody at Carolina, they love the guy, that worked with them on a daily basis. He was very, he didn't come in and try to, he tried to fix football stuff, wasn't like snobbish about it. And a place like Virginia Tech, which is it's a big school, small place though. Blacksburg's up in the mountains. It's a lot like Boone, North Carolina without the ski slopes, I would guess. Southwestern Virginia. So it's a small place. You just don't do that. I mean, Bud Foster ended up leaving. I mean, yeah. So they go and hire Brent Pry. And he went 3-8 his first year, 7-6, 6-7. Their athletic director, I would be a little pissed if I were a Hokie. And in fact, as someone that's admired and respected that program for years, it's kind of weird. Whit Babcock, supposed to be a star AD, he just straight up, and maybe he's being honest, straight up said, we need $200 million up here to compete. And I'm like, well, I don't know about that. I mean, but you should be able to get it. It's the State University of Virginia with thousands of alums. But, I don't know that now before a critical football season is the right time to do it. And Hokie fans, they like Brent Pry. I mean, he has connections back to the past, the Beamer era. I like the guy, but that's a program that's ready to win again. And they're in the ACC. It's just not enough up there anymore to just beat Virginia every year. It never has been. It hasn't been for a long time. They beat UVA just about every year. Turn that thing around. Turn that puppy around, right? So they got to win. They're looking at the South Carolina game as an opportunity to get back, which would be the saddest thing ever if South Carolina lost. And beating the Gamecocks was responsible for launching Illinois and Virginia Tech back to relevancy. I can't believe Illinois. Illinois fans are starting to come out of the woodwork and talk crap about the Citrus Bowl now. It's unbelievable. So what do they have this year? That's at Virginia Tech. We went through it early, gathered, just like every other team. You go through preseason. I'll say this: their media and their insiders, quote unquote, or they're not confident about a lot of their players. I think the coaching staff is. So there's a disconnect there. I read through some of their reports. Not a lot of difference makers was a theme. Okay. I'll tell you who is a difference maker right now, though. And South Carolina absolutely has to be aware of him. and that's quarterback Kieron Jones, Karon Jones. I want to say it right. I should have looked it up. But drones. I started watching film on him. This guy's big. He's about 6'3", 222, like Lenoris. He can run. Probably not as elusive. His arm is very interesting. He's got a quick release. Can put it on the money. Operationally, they had a different offense last year. Obviously, Philip Montgomery's coming in. He's got his Art Briles tree. He was the head coach at Tulsa. Coach with Skip Holtz in the UFL last year. That's maybe something else we'll talk to Tom Luganbill about. Is Philip Montgomery as an OC? So there's questions. Will he go fast? Will he maybe not go fast and do more what he did there? What are they going to do? I think if they're smart, they're going to try to go fast because they're going to see South Carolina has how many new starters, and you got a 300 something pound defensive line on the interior on average. You want to wear them down. They have some offensive linemen in from West Virginia that are probably going to start. They obviously lost the kid from Whale Branch High School in Buford that went to Auburn for big money at left tackle. I don't know who's going to block Dylan Stewart. Probably a combination of people. Their tight end is good. Their receivers, Jalen Lane, son of my good friend Westside High School head coach Brian Lane, is now with the Washington Commanders after being drafted. He is out. So South Carolina kid done good at Virginia Tech after transferring from Middle Tennessee State. Really always Brian and I played football together back in the day. Caught a touchdown from him one time at Gaffney's old stadium when I was in junior high. But just a good guy and a great coach. So always wish he and his family the best. But Jalen's not there anymore. They got some guys from the portal, Donovan Green, Cam Selden, Cameron Selden, I think's his name. And indeed, it is Cam Selden, and he's a guy. If you remember Debo Samuel at Carolina, kind of how they used him. This is a guy that they're going to try to use. I mean, in fact, they said Debo Samuel. 24/7 Sports had him just crazy high compared to the rest of the country. 77th nationally in the class. Oh, what class is that? Class of 2025? No, that's not 2025. Um, Class of 2023. So Lenore Sellers class. Signed with Tennessee. Tennessee got him out of there. Didn't really work out at UT's. Back home at Virginia Tech from a small school. They've been talking about this guy, and he was a running back at Tennessee. Now they're going to use him in kind of different ways. So that's a guy to keep an eye on. Donovan Green is in from Wake Forest. Gamecocks kind of looked at him. He's another wide receiver. So, they're going to have to, drones or not, they're going to have to protect. But what I think they're going to try to do is spread Carolina out and shoot the gaps and try to go fast and confuse them. That's just my opinion. You got a new coordinator there that has a background in that kind of stuff and a ready-made quarterback to do it. So Carolina's going to have to play disciplined football and be ready for just about anything there. But yeah, Selden's a guy to look out for. Their running back's interesting. I liked what I saw of him on film. Terrion Stewart, who came in from Bowling Green, rushed for 898 yards, 5.9 yards per carry during his career at Bowling Green. 5'9", 222. He's a Memphis kid. Yeah, Memphis kid's pretty tough. They can play ball. But if you look at his last three games last year, and I don't know if he was beat up, maybe they had injuries on the offensive line. I haven't looked. But 34 or 32, 34, and 22 yards against Ball State, Miami of Ohio, Arkansas State. Most of his yardage, his big games last year were against Fordham, Kent, and then Central and Western Michigan. Those were his 100-yard games last year. Behind an offensive line that they're hopeful for, but Carolina, I think, and again, are they going to try to speed Carolina up and wear him down? I don't know. He's a dangerous player, though. And then you got Selden that they're going to hand the ball to in different ways. And then there's Brandon Bennett's son, Braylon Bennett. It comes in from Coastal Carolina. He's part of their depth as well. So those are guys just kind of look for. Defensively, they're missing their top pass rusher from last year and some pieces in the secondary. Aeneas Peebles, 19 of 37 sacks last year, so more than half their sacks out the door. But they are capable. Ben Bell, coming in from Texas State, had about, I think, 10 and a half at Texas State 2 years ago. He's healthy now. He's kind of an undersized. Brian Thomas Jr. would be the comparison if you're looking for a player comparison for on the Gamecocks. They like the two tackles, Kamari Copeland and Kevin Gilliam. Now, Carolina recruited Kevin Gilliam, by the way. I don't know though. They also brought in a guy from Eastern Michigan. James starts with a DJ Ojemokian. Look out for that guy. He may be pretty good. A lot of these guys are Group of Five and FCS transfers they brought in, and you know how I feel about that. Some of these guys are better than their level, and it doesn't matter if they played on a bad team last year. I mean, you can have a guy come from a bad team that's a pretty good individual player. Otherwise, the NFL draft would never draft someone off a team that had a losing record, and they do frequently. So individual talent's different. But Kamari Copeland and Kevin Gilliam, I was under the impression they were probably a little better than what their analysts are saying. This was another piece that said no difference makers, no true difference makers, and maybe they're just talking about proven players. But that was interesting to me. South Carolina is going to have to block these guys, but Carolina, as we've discussed, is much bigger up front. But we'll have a true freshman, most likely Cedric Surratt, heading in there. As John Strickland pointed out yesterday, it looks like three-fifths of the offensive line set. That's kind of, that is true with Josiah Thompson, Boaz Stanley, and Trevon Ball. But the big tree Cason battle is going to continue to rage on, as is Nick Sharp and Shed Surratt. I do think Tree and Shed are ahead. Oh, that rhymed right now. So, the defensive tackles for Virginia Tech, I think there's some potential there, obviously. Linebacker, they have a guy that they're really high on, Caleb Woodson, and he's a bigger dude, 6'3", 230, and can run. Linebacker, according to one of their insiders, very scrutinized. Brent Pry was a linebackers coach by trade. Sam Sifkus, their new defensive coordinator, coached linebackers for the Arizona Cardinals. And then Xavier Abidi, one of the best linebackers in Virginia Tech history, is also helping with that unit. They brought in a kid from the transfer portal, Max Short, over spring, kind of like a lot of spring portal pickups. He's kind of catching up. But Caleb Woodson is a guy to keep an eye on right there. I think he'll probably be in the middle of that defense. Scheme wise, who knows? It did say, this is an interesting tidbit. I guess in one of the scrimmages they had, or one of the practice, they had some operational issues, which is good. I mean, they've had them at Carolina in scrimmages before too. That means communication from the sidelines, and that's why you scrimmage all that and you work all that during scrimmages, like a game. Like Beamer talked about that yesterday, is because you want to get that down. Because if you don't during a game, it's going to rear its ugly head most likely, and you really sometimes can't even avoid that. But apparently, they were up in arms about it. So there's a little report from Evan, and he mentioned Bud Foster was going to be the eye in the sky. Bud is technically an analyst for them. And here's why that's concerning, because I remember during the Frank Beamer era at Virginia Tech, I think it was 14. Shane was on that staff, still at Virginia Tech at the time. And they went to Ohio State for the opener. And Bud Foster had spent all summer designing this defense, tailor-made. I think Tom Herman was the OC at Ohio State too, and I think Ohio State won the national championship, if I'm not mistaken. But it was brilliant. Probably one of the last times I think we saw a Bud Foster kind of work his genius. Not that he look, I mean, I'm not coming down on him. He's one of the greatest of all time, and it's kind of scary with regards to the uh, the prep for it and what to expect. But it was brilliant, and Frank Beamer got a big win for yeah, it's 2014 in the shoe in Columbus. Sorry about that. I was looking that up. I want to be accurate with that. So that was an interesting note that old Bud Foster's up there, kind of helping them out. And obviously their defensive. So yeah, I think there's probably a lot of game planning going on. The good news for South Carolina in that regard is that Mike Shula hadn't called plays in college full time since '07. And I'll tell you this right now, a little scoopage on it. The bowl game, he was calling Dowell Loggins offense with a couple of wrinkles here and there. There was no time to put together an entirely new playbook, and they had to piece whatever game plan they had together. They didn't have Loggins' entire playbook at the time. And so it was kind of like, hey, Sean Elliott, Mike Fury, those guys are good at game plan. I mean, I think they had enough. Like I said, play calling had nothing to do with the bowl game. I mean, it was, you can't really go through and say, well, we should have called this, coach should have called that. People are upset about the outcome. And I get that and the results because it's a bottom line game. And I get that. But the actual calling of the plays, there's no problem with that. I mean, he didn't call a play and go, don't run under any circumstances, Lenoris. He obviously didn't call a fake field goal, obviously didn't miss a field goal, that kind of thing. But my point with that is I don't know that Virginia Tech, Bud Foster, and they're going to be able to discern much about what to expect. Lenore Sellers is a different quarterback too. So I don't know. I kind of got freaked out a little bit about this game. Uh, I'll just share this with you. I had a bad dream Carolina lost because I'm going and I got an early flight out Monday morning on Labor Day. And I'm just kind of like, God, if they lose, it's going to be just a terrible. A lot of times it is a terrible experience at Hartsfield Jackson in Atlanta just because of the wonderful customer service you get in that airport. Um, but that'll be even more terrible. It's a nightmare. Yeah, please don't lose that one. But don't lose the opener. Not please. North Carolina, I was in Charlotte a couple of years ago, and the wife and I, we'd previously planned this. We went to Helen, Georgia, and went tubing on Monday. So that was good to kind of lick my wounds and all that good stuff. And actually flew out of Atlanta that Tuesday. But look, I had a dream. So I gotta start worrying. Everybody does when you get closer because you really don't know what everybody else has. Then I watched drones and I was like, man, this could be problematic. I don't know how good some of these guys are. But then, you read the reports out of Blacksburg, and unless they're playing, and look, I'm not putting playing possum past any of the Hokie insiders. Uh, it's not in their nature, but they're a savvy bunch, you know. They're a savvy bunch. So, but after reading that and kind of gathering some intel behind the scenes, they have a lot of question marks. And it's one of those things where even with great potential and even with good players that they added so much new over the summer. You have to kind of wonder with new coordinators and everything if they're operationally, and then you read about the operational stuff. Anytime you have new coaches and new players, that's going to happen in practice. But you have to wonder in this short time. We're 11 days from kickoff, how they're going to do. So that's something to look for. We'll talk about the keys to the game and all that good stuff. But the line is dropping 7.5. So maybe that means I don't know. Maybe they don't think Faison will be eligible in Vegas. Maybe they're just wrong about South Carolina like they always are. Maybe they've gotten some intel that Virginia Tech expects to be good. Because I can tell you inside their program, they think that. It's the core people that cover it and the experts that don't. 7.5. I mean, that to me, that's a close game. In an opener too, you got to factor in the opener deal in college football. And offense, defense, and I think on special teams, they got a really good kicker, by the way, the Hokies do. And then that may be the theme of my meltdown. I'm not really going to melt down about it, but you know, I think facing a Shane Beamer team, like kind of like Dabo did a couple years ago, it blew up in his face trying to pull something on special teams. Anyway, that's the Hokie news or the Hokie look in. We'll also look in on them probably during game week next week. Probably try to line up some guests on the show and the morning show to talk Virginia Tech. I'll ask Tom Luganbill about it later today on JC and Morgan. And don't forget, Tailgate Talks is live. JC and Morgan, 9:30. Lugs will join us at 10. The morning show, 10. Stephen Garcia, Brad Crawford, Rob Williams, all in the morning show. It's wide open Wednesday on the show with Phil and myself. And then you roll on into Sports Talk from 6 to 8 on the app. And then the late night Gamecock show with Matt and Alex. They're going to have some stats for you, breakdowns and all that as we get closer to Gamecock kickoff. All right, this has been Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Have a great hump day, everyone. Holla at you soon.
JC and Mad Dog Mully on the Gamecock Show.